All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and welcome to our Genesis chapter 30 study. Um, it's a beautiful journey that we've been on, traveling through and watching the lives of the patriarchs and watching the human ways about them. Because if you allow it to, they can be memorialized in a way that is unyali, that is unlike Yah. You know what I mean? They can be almost worshipped within themselves. And what I believe Yahuah is always and continually trying to show us is that they have the same sensibilities as we do. They have the same five senses. They can hear, they can taste, they can see, they can smell, they can touch, and they act upon those things, sometimes to their detriment, but always Yah directs them, even in the course of their errors and their ways back to himself. And I think that these things are recorded not in a perfect way, not in an unflawless way, but in a completely flawed way to show the difference between man and himself and his son. So that we can be encouraged as we read through and watch the mistakes that they make. And we read a couple of chapters ago about Jacob, how him and his mother swindled to get their way into the fray when it was promised by Yah. And we watched that whole idea of being deceived or being a deceiver or being bamboozled comes back full circle. And we talked about, well, did he get away with it? Well, the answer is no. The scripture shows that he didn't. So we are right in the middle of Jacob starting his family, which becomes the 12 tribes. And we're dealing with the birth of his children, and the two sisters and the concubine. So we're going to jump right in, Genesis chapter 30. We'll take 8 verses at a time. And how we do it is the person who reads gets the first crack at explaining, and then we all follow up and show what we see in the passages. So who wants to take the first 8 verses of Genesis chapter 30?
I'll take him.
JP raised his hand.
Okay.
All right. Who was that said I'll take it?
It was me and Mecca.
Okay, Mecca, you can take the next 8. JP, you go ahead.
Okay, it says Genesis chapter 30. And when Rachel, how many verses do you want me to read? I'm sorry.
8 verses.
Okay. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister and said unto Jacob, give me children or else I die. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in Elohim's stead? Who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And she said, behold, my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah, her handmaid, to wife. And Jacob went in unto her, and Bilhah conceived, and bare Jacob a son. And Rachel said, Elohim hath judged me, and hath also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. And Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. And, just kind of going through the study with my wife, speaking about Abraham and Sarah, I'm like, wow, it's just, did she not get like the understanding of what happened there? And, it's just an interesting thing how they do the same thing, and that's all I was just kept as I was reading. And I also wonder if it was common for this to happen, for people, I mean, they do it nowadays. They do it nowadays as well, where somebody will say, "Oh, well, I need to get a what do they call that? Surrogate, surrogate." And
Surrogate. Yeah.
yeah, so it's interesting that that we're seeing that in the scriptures but it seemed common, like as if it was. And not only that, let me just add this real quick to the end of my response. They didn't just have babies with their handmaids, but they married them. So they kept Torah in that sense to me by saying you need to still marry her before you have the babies with her. And there was the same thing with Abraham and Sarah. Abraham, he married Hagar. So it's an interesting part about it. They don't just say have a baby for me, but not you have to marry her first to keep Torah, so that so that's it. Shalom.
Yeah, good, brother. There's a lot of things in what you said that I want to touch on. One was the idea that, when they brought other women into the fray, one of the things that's missed, I think, too, is that the two that were married, Abraham and Sarai, everyone else was service for them. So the children they were supposed to be offered up for them. So they would be under the umbrella of the family, and yes, be married, but they would come under, Hagar would come under Sarah. That's why there was still friction there, because Hagar didn't look at Sarah that way. She said, no, this is my son, and not that I had this son for you. The other point you made about how they sought out for the surrogate, when I really looked into this, I found out that they would actually, when that surrogate would have the child, the surrogate would actually sit on the lap of the mother that couldn't bear children and birth her child. And then the baby, the woman would look over the shoulder. The baby would, when he looked up, would see the mother that she was having the child for. So in this case, Sarah would take that child to be her own. This surrogate did it for her under the guidance of Abraham. So very interesting how we see how that is the way it was supposed to be, but that's never how it was done. You know what I mean? Because there was dysfunction, as we clearly see in the way the relationships were, from the two sons, Jacob and Esau, to the way Rebecca was. And, what's interesting is they never got a chance to meet Sarah and the wisdom she could have given those women, because, again, she mirrors the same attitudes. Even in the first verse you read, it says she envied. That's it describes a inner rage towards that person, and it's exactly what Sarai felt towards Hagar, and it's the exact same word used of Joseph and his brothers. His brothers had a deep core sinking hatred or rage towards their brother, and that's what caused, as we know, the tribes to be split. So very good, brother. That's the core of what's happening here, and that they're veering off the road that Yahuah wants to take them down. What else do we see? Sister Linda, I see your hand raised, and then Ameka.
Yes, very quickly. I was just thinking, with Rachel going through so much with not having any children, it was a bit more during that time in Hebrew culture and antiquity, because of families' socio-economic value was determined by the amount of children they had. So with Rachel, her self-value was affected, her self-esteem and all of that, because she didn't feel that she was contributing to the contribution, but she wasn't contributing to the wholeness of the social economic status of the family. A man was determined, his social status was determined by how many children he had. That's all I wanted to just point out.
No, and keeping in that same thought process to Rachel too, because you know, you could actually, if your woman didn't bear children, she was not honored, and he could actually divorce her and put her out of his tent. You know, so these are things that are real. These are real situations that they're dealing with here. So great point, sis. Brother Mecca.
Yeah, one thing that stood out to me was verse 2. It says, and also after she basically, verse 1 and 2, you know, she asked him to go into prayer, you know, that he should seek, you know, Yahuah for her. And in verse 2, it says, and Yaakov's anger was kindled against Rahel, and he said, am I Elohim's stead? Who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? And so immediately, like most men, I think at that point, you know, would have been, okay, you know, I'll go into prayer for you, you know, I'll seek Yahuah for you. But Yaakov's reply was like, you go to him. You know, you kind of like, you go to him. Like, am I him? Like, don't go to me. You go straight to him and request of him. And you can kind of see in verse, you know, verse 3, oh no, I'm sorry, in verse 6, he says, and Rahel said, Elohim has judged me and has also heard my voice and has given me a son. Therefore, she called his name Dan. And so it's kind of like, you know, I see that instilling the faith in the women. You know, often in scripture, you know, Elohim is telling, you know, his servants, his children, you know, don't go into the way of the Gentiles and don't marry yourself to these women because they'll take you away from me. And we don't see her necessarily drawing Yaakov away from Elohim, but sending him to her. But to see that faith be instilled back into the women, you know, like, look, don't come to me as a man. Like, you take it straight to Elohim and go to him yourself and seek of him. You know, it's kind of like, seems like that's the attitude he kind of gave her. You know, and so I thought that was pretty interesting because, you know, that's exactly, you know, what we are to do at, you know, at least, you know, as husband and wife. You know, we should both be seeking Elohim together, you know, for our causes, but, you know, more so not putting it on anybody else, that anytime we have a problem individually, we should be seeking Elohim. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I didn't see that when I looked at it. I do see why you say that, and I'm not going to disagree with the fact that there is a calling for her to recognize that it's Yah. When I read it, I actually looked at it as she's blaming him that she can't have children. In other words, you give me children. Like, and Jacob, to me, his response was like, look, I got other children. Can't you see? You know, it's your womb that is closed. And he points her to who would be able to open up the womb. So I think you're right in what you're saying, but I think Jacob's response had to do with the blame being placed on him for not being able to give her a child. It was Yahuah that was closing her womb because he already had evidence that his stuff worked. I should say. But you understand what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying, Emeka?
Yeah. I think if I'm not mistaken, it talks in the first, you know, in the first verse 1, it says Rachel envied her sister, you know, and so I don't think as much, you know, I think she actually knew that it was her, you know, which is why she actually sent, you know, Yaakov to Elohim, because she's like, listen, like you just said, your stuff is working, but for some reason there's something wrong with me, you know. So you go seek Elohim and see if he can fix this problem. And so, you know, he kind of gets angry with her. But, you know, it says that she envied her sister. So I don't think that it was, I don't so much think that she thought that there was something wrong with him. I think that she was really just like, yo, something's going on. Somebody needs to seek Elohim.
Well, let's look at it. So the envying that she had was the fact that her sister was able to bear and she wasn't. She also felt as though, there was swindling going on with how she ended up with her when his love was for her in the first place. But what she says to him is, give me children. Jacob redirects her in the next verse to where this would come from. It can't come from him. Like what he's doing is he's giving her exactly the same thing he's given Leah, but it's not working. And the reason it's not working is because he's not in the place of Yah. He says, am I in the place of Yah? Who has withheld you from the fruit of their womb? It's a question. So she comes up with her own answer and not knowing that Yah is eventually going to bless her and offers her handmaid. It's an alternative. So there is a calling for her to recognize where this is coming from. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, absolutely. I see that now.
Okay. And we'll always do this, brothers and sisters. We'll always look at these things and precept by precept. That's why we study this way, and we're all Baruch for it. So praise Yah. What else we see? You see something else, Amaka?
The other thing I see is, the names, going back to the names, she named him Dan, and she says, because, Elohim has judged me, and, Dan means judge. So just how, the names of all the children always have meanings. It's always tied up to the situation or experience that the Israelites are going through. The names aren't just pointless, in today's time, people just name their kid. Oh, that sounds nice, I like this, just because I knew so-and-so and this was their name. But, the Israelites really took that. And it goes back to the attribution of the character, because that becomes, your name is something that has to do with your character. It ends up leading you in your character. And so, I just think that was really powerful that she named her son Dan. We know Dan is definitely, comes out to be a judging nation of Israel, when that goes to war, for Elohim. So.
Yeah, and I really appreciate how, when Moshe wrote this, obviously directed by the Ruach, spells it all out for us, the names and what they meant and their responses. Her thanking Yah for hearing her prayer, right? And giving her a child through Bilhah. So, absolutely. The names, the names, I think that's one of the most beautiful things about reading through and dissecting the names, because they guide us to Yahushua. You know what I mean? They guide us to Yahuah. It's a clear picture drawn through the names, and how often and how normal it was to give a name of substance, and how today that doesn't take place on the average. Yes, we who have our children and grandchildren, we name them, with names of significance, but that wasn't always, I don't know that when my mother named me my name, whether she was looking for something of significance. Fortunately for me, my name Hebrew is Medad, which was an Israelite. So it points to, even though she didn't know, you know what I mean? I'm in Israel one way or the other. So praise Yah. So that's kind of looking at it on the backside, but you understand what I'm saying, how it meant something to have a relationship with Yah, to be intimate with Yah, enough to know that I'm going to name my child something that reflects back to him. So when somebody sees his actions, sees her actions, it is an illumination. It is a light to bring attention to Yahuah. So absolutely. Praise Yah. Any olive tithes here, brother?
There's one I might be able to talk about.
Okay.
But I'm just kind of baffled here that they keep following this same order. You know, there was already 2 wives he had. You know, and I agree with you. You know, there was I think there was some jealousy there about her sister, which shouldn't even been his wife in the beginning, because there was some kind of deceit there by her replacing Rebecca and him sleeping with her, and then of course he was shocked because he found out that he was sleeping with the other sister instead of the one that he actually loved. So that relationship began in that pretense, but they were both his wives. So why would she feel the need to give a concubine to him to sleep with to get a child? You know, I mean, that just baffles me. But to your question about that, so the one on left top, and this is in 4, where she gave him a left top, Bilhah, her handmaid. So there must have been a covenant that was established there in that anyways, so that he could bear that son. But I want to go back to this discussion here about what Rachel said to Jacob, you know, about, you know, giving her a son. I mean, it's like, okay, give me a son or I'm going to die. And he's like, who am I? Yahuah? You know, I'm not the guy that's doing this. I'm doing my best I can. So why are you trying to make me the guy that's got to give you a child? I don't control that aspect. I just do my part. And then, you know, so all of a sudden she turns and gives a concubine, a handmaid to him. Why so fast? You know, I mean, why, I guess there's not a lack of faith or trust that Yahuah is going to actually provide for her. You know, I guess maybe just reading into this, I guess. But then we see that, you know, he goes on and has children. Evidently, she did have a son after all of that. So now how does she feel? You know, she got out in front of Yahuah, and now there's somebody else involved, you know, that's got another child. So, you know, in just those few verses already, it's like, you know, she's wrestled with her sister. She's struggling to deal with this, that her sister is involved with her husband, and she shouldn't have been. And she also has a child now before her. So I'm sure she's got a lot on her mind, like, wow, this is crazy. You know, I'm sure there was a lot of stress and stuff like that involved, you know. So I can only imagine the feelings that she was having of jealousy, you know, with her sister, I assume. So
yeah, this was talk about the inner man. This was an inner burning. This was a fire in her. I mean, it's literally speaks of a battle, you know. And she surmises it in verse 8. She says, "Then Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and indeed I have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. So this whole point, she's jealous and she wants to have the same thing, and the prevailing of it has brought forth 2 children, two young sons. So it was a fire that couldn't be quenched, you know. And you know, later Yahuah really shows her how to quench it, because this was done out of anger and envy. But then when she finally does, she has Joseph, you know, and then later she has Benjamin. So yeah, I mean, and I definitely think there's a distinction, and he shows us later. We'll see as the chapters unravel, we'll see the difference between what Yahuah does and what we do on our own. You know, he can still bless it, but not like he can do if we just pay attention and have faith in him, right? And listen to him. And our ears are bent towards only moving when he says so, you know? So we see anything else in those first 8 verses? If not, we'll move. I think Omeka wanted to read the next 8 verses.
let's go.
You can go ahead, brother. Oh, he's not on here.
Yeah, he dropped off. Okay, well, I'll just take his place and then he can get the next 8. How's that?
Yep.
All right, so I'm doing 9 through 16.
Yes, sir.
So when Leah saw that he had left bearing, or that she had left bearing, she took Aleph Tav, Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob to be his woman. Yeah. And Zilpah's, Leah's maid, bore Jacob a son. And Leah said, a troop comes. And she called Aleph Tav his name Gad. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bore Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed, or Baruch. And she called Aleph Tav his name Asher. Interesting, the names. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray you, for your son's mandrake. And she said unto her, it is a small matter that you have taken Aleph Tav, my man. Question mark. Wow. And would you take away Aleph Tav, my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. And Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come in unto me, for surely I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. Sounds like there's a whole lot of childbearing going on, a whole lot of giving of these maids, even more so. This guy, I don't know how he was able to handle all of that. You know, all to try to get more to bear more children. You know, I don't know, but I see that interesting there in 15. That one sticks out to me a lot. Is that you know, when he said to her, "It's no small matter that you have taken my left top, my man, the man that I've got a covenant with."
Right.
And would you take my sons also? You know, it's like, you know, she's starting to feel it now. I think she's starting to recognize she made some mistakes, you know, and she can't take them back now. Now she's feeling bad because it's not working out for her like she thought, you know. But what a saga! You'd think they would learn, you know, but they keep giving him more.
It's funny. It's
Well, how
funny.
does he resist this? How come he can't say? Why didn't the man say something? Say, no, wait a minute, hold on. I got you. I don't need more.
Right,
Let's
right.
try. Let's keep on trying. Let's pray to Yahuah. Let's trust him to give us a child. You know, stop trying to give me all these women. You know,
That's one of the funny things about this whole thing is that we don't see Jacob wrestling at all. You know what I mean? He just partakes. You know what I mean? As he's directed to, you know. So, but it's interesting how, you know, Leah watches, you know, Rachel bring in handmaids, so she does the same. So it's now like she gets her back for what she did. Now she's one up on her. Now she wants the mandrakes. Now, the mandrakes were known in this time as love. They were called love apples, and they were actually an aphrodisiac that are even spoke about in Song of Songs. Solomon talks about mandrakes, the aroma of the mandrake. So it was something that drew them in with the aroma, with the tasting. They said it was similar to like a potato or a gave another fruit that it the consistency of the fruit itself. But she actually hires, you know, for her to come in to be with her that night, so that she could have more children. So very interesting. Brother Tony, and then Sister Linda.
All right. Thank you, brother. In going back to what you guys were saying, like, why would he just continue to partake and just, you know, not even question anything? Well, something that comes to my mind is couple chapters earlier, chapter 28 of Genesis, starting in verse 3, where it says, "And El Shaddai bless you and make you fruitful and increase you, and you shall become an assembly of peoples, and give to you the blessing of Abraham, to you and your seed, so that you inherit the land of your sojourning." So he had this specific promise given to him, and now you have a man who has one of the greatest blessings to ever be recorded in the scriptures, and he's living with this in the back of his mind. And not only with those verses, but if you continue down the chapter 28, you see in verse 14, it's also said, "And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall break forth to the west and to the east, and to the north and to the south, and all the clans of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your seed." So just to have this blessing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a literal understanding. Jacob.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. You weren't done?
Oh, my Bluetooth died. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So yeah, just continuing on, this is the type of man who received these blessings. And I just know that for my part, the more I start to understand about the blessings of Israel and being a part of Israel and everything that we will inherit, doesn't that change our outlook on the way the actions that we take from the moment that we recognize what our inheritance is? And so I just see Jacob, he's not going to put up a fight. He's just going to partake of these blessings that he knows were given to him from Yah.
Yeah, I bet he did. So, I mean, it's definitely, when you look at what's promised to him, us looking into it and seeing this, we can say, oh, maybe he was thinking about this. We don't have any of the thoughts of Jacob here. We just have his responses, and then we have the children being birthed after he was being presented to women. So I think, what Rick and I were talking about was on the human side, there is no, well, you're my wife, why are you giving me your handmaid? There's also this understanding that this was customary in their culture. So he knew that there was a rift between the two. Like, there's no way you can be the head of your house and not see this. So I think there's more question here about what his mind was thinking versus what he knew Yahuah was going to do through him. I don't know if he tied the two together when they brought those handmaids in, you know what I mean, to take care of business. So that's just my thoughts. I don't know. He very well could have, but it's definitely something to look at, because it's, the blessings that are promised to him are glaring. There doesn't seem to be necessarily a spiritual connection with what Jacob is doing versus what's actually happening. So, something we can look at. What you guys think? Sister Linda?
Yes, I just wanted to just mention a few little things on these verses. In 13, in verse 13, Leah said, "Happy am I." That the same word that she named her son by, her handmaid's son, Asher or Asher in Hebrew. That word is where we a lot of times bless this and blesses that, and we think it's Baruch. A lot of times it's Asher, that word there.
Okay.
The second part B of 13 that I wanted to mention was, you see what Leah says? She says, "Happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed." So this is showing how the social aspect comes in here now, of having a lot of babies, how she was valued in her society. And the other thing I wanted to mention was this thing about mandrakes. Elder Rod, I thought you were going to take it all away, but I found this to be so interesting because I never saw a mandrake before, so I researched the mandrake. These mandrakes, the root of the mandrake in its infant, in its young form, looks just like a little baby. It looks like little brown babies, and then as it grows and becomes about ready to harvest, it looks like a man. It's the strangest thing to see one of these things. So that's why they grew all over Israel, and just to look at one, you think about having babies because it has a human form.
Yeah, nah. I mean, I researched it, but I didn't research it that far. I didn't see a
Oh,
picture.
yes. Got to get a picture. Got to get a picture of the young ones. Look just like little babies, and then as it grows, as the fruit grows, it turns from a little baby to a grown man. I've never seen anything like that before.
Co-host me, will you, Rob?
Okay.
That's very interesting.
I pulled it up online if you want me to share it.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that? I was going to do the same, so you beat me to it. I'd like to see that.
I just Google image. It's a bunch of different images. So hold on. All right, can you see?
Not yet.
No.
Obviously, all of them aren't real, but I think this one here is real.
Oh yeah.
He's here.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness.
That's ridiculous. That is crazy. Look, so they use them in movies too because of that.
Wait a
It's
minute.
crazy. Look at it. What in the world? No way.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
What?
Some of them.
Oh.
Fake.
What in the world?
Some of those.
Really?
Some of those aren't
man.
images.
Look at this.
Man, those things got faces on them.
Yeah, right. That's crazy.
What in the world? No, that's real. I think the faces are added. I think it's just like this.
Yeah, some of that's not accurate, but I think
this here's a good one probably.
Yeah, because some of them look like gargoyles, man. Come on.
Yeah. You see, they use them in like Harry Potter and stuff like that. So it's a well-known thing. What she's saying, apparently.
Yeah. Nah, I appreciate that. I mean, I knew that they kind of look like potatoes or ginger root the way they look. So I knew that their consistency was that of a potato, and the way that they were, because you actually eat the root part, or burn the root part because there was an aroma that Solomon talks about as an alluring fact, Now that looks like it might be real.
Yeah, that's.
I was hoping some of the ones. I was hoping some of the ones with the faces wasn't true real because we were going to have babies by them. But that's amazing.
Right, brother Don. Right. They look like gargoyles, like I said.
They look like gargoyles. We're going to want to have babies by one of them.
Yeah.
That don't look nothing of Yah.
Praise Yah. All right, cool.
All
right. I think we've seen enough images of the mandrake.
I've never seen that before.
That's a great insight to the physical, what the eye sees. Look, if I eat one of these, if I smell one of these, I'll too have one. It just gives visual to what they actually believed and thought. Sister Robbie.
Yes, hi. I wanted to bring out the scripture of Genesis Bereshit, chapter 30, verse 14. And we've been talking about the mandrakes. It says, now during the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field, and he brought them to his mother, Leah. I just wanted to emphasize that even the family members, the sons, were involved in this competition between Leah and Rachel. Like he's trying to help his mama get pregnant. And from there, then we see how Rachel got the mandrake from Leah. It's just really amazing because this contention, this competition started with the mothers, it affected their sons, and it continued on you know, because we see the, I guess, jealousy that, you know, the brothers had towards their younger brother, you know, Joseph. So I just found that to be interesting.
Yeah, yeah, good point. I think what's interesting, I mean, I do see, you know, he went out at the time of harvest, and he brings these back. It could very well be that there was something purposeful about the mandrakes, but they're mentioned here specifically for that reason because of what they do. So I never looked at it as Reuben was partaking. I just looked at it as he was harvesting at that time, you know, because it was a time of harvest, so they were harvesting all fruits and vegetables for the family. But interesting that Reuben could have been involved in helping his mother. What do you guys think? Anyone?
What I see there is that it looks like he was, because it says here Reuben went the days of the wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field. So he was harvesting and he found these, and I can only think that he thought, uh-oh, I got to take these to my mother. So he took them to his mother Leah. Then you see Rachel said to her, "Give me, I pray that the mandrake that your son brought," basically. So she automatically put that into her thought that I need to get some of that so that I can, you know, partake and, of course, have a child. So I see that she's using, or she sees this as that potential, and then she said unto her, "It is a small matter that you have taken and left out my man." So now you also want my son's mandrake, you know. I see that it's like she's just put off with this, that she's asking for this too. She's already got the man. Now she wants the mandrake so that she can have a child. Evidently, in their belief system, this had something to do with that, I assume. You know.
Well, the mandrakes were also alluring, so they would cause the man to, you know, the aroma would cause the man to be aroused. So I never looked, but what the point I was trying to make is Reuben being as a partaker, I think Reuben may have just been sent out to get them. Like, would he have known what they were?
It sounds like he was in the field harvesting wheat when he found them. From my perspective, what I see is
found mandrakes, yeah, in the
so
field.
Then he took
well,
them
yeah, I mean, it could very well be that he found them and assisted. Like he said, "Man, I know what these are for. Let me take these to my mom. She wants more children." You know what I mean? So again, I didn't look at it that way, but I can see that. That possibility.
I just want to know where I can find some mandrakes at.
Me too.
You don't need no mandrakes.
You know, for real, man. You already got something cooking up in the oven, man. That oven fully cooking right now.
I'm sure they got other health benefits.
All right, Brother Don, go ahead.
Like a blue pill.
To me, they look like almost, when they're seeing the pictures of them, like the stalks of ginger. You know, people get the ginger to cleanse their bodies, and with this mandrake were to, if it help you enhance a kid, or was it to really cleanse the man, to purify him, to enhance babies? Because you look at those gingers, they look like the gingers. You know, and people crave for gingers to help cleanse their body and things like this. And with that look, if they have a baby, I'm like a Mecca. You can send a couple of them this way too.
What'd you say, a Mecca?
Yeah, was that a Mecca?
Mike.
Mike said that about it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, don't send a Mecca no mandrakes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, brother.
All right.
Hey, look,
moving right along. Anything else there?
No, I honestly thought, it's funny, right before that was said, though, before Sister Robbie brought that out, it went through my mind like, man, like, Reuben was a part of this. Like, he knew what it meant. He was like, "Yo, mom, here you go." You know, but yeah, no, I definitely know we've exhausted that conversation. But I thought that was pretty interesting that he took him straight to his mom. And then, you know, you look at it and it's like Rahel did not say, you know, give. It's not like she said, "Give me some of your mandrakes." She was like, pretty much give me all your mandrakes. You know, give me the mandrakes that your son had found. And so, you know, to see that, you know, Leah's reply, she was like, "Yo, you already got my man, but even the little bit that I have here to try to draw him to me a little bit, like, I can't even have that." And so, you know, the whole agreement they come into terms with, you know, I thought that was kind of interesting. That she was like, "Look, give me your mandrakes, and you know he's yours." You know, and they kind of hired. What did she say in what is it, verse 18? It says, "And Leah said, Elohim has given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my man," and she called his name Yishakar. So it's like I thought that was pretty interesting. You know that. Oh, and then verse 16 she says, "For surely I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." I don't know how it would feel if somebody came up to me, if one of my wives came up to me and said, "I've hired you." Like, are we not married? Like, what do you mean you hired me? You know, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, I mean, to that point, Jacob preferred Rachel. You know, Leah. He went through Leah to get to Rachel. So I think it's more talking about giving him a reason to be back with her, because he wanted to move on. You know what I mean? Leah was in the way of him being with Rachel. So I think that's kind of what they're trying to point out. He loved Rachel. You know what I mean? Leah was just there, you know, and necessary for him in the case of Leah. So that's more what it's trying to say there, I think. Tony, and then Mike. You still want to say something, Mike? All right, you good? Tony?
Oh, I just wanted to raise my hand to do the reading for the next part.
Oh, okay. All right. So anyone else have anything in the second 8 verses? If not, you can go from 17 to 24, Brother Tony.
Okay, verse 17. And Elohim listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Yaakov a 5th son. And Leah said, Elohim has given me my hire, because I have given my female servant to my husband. So she called his name Yissachar. And Leah conceived again and bore Yaakov a 6th son. And Leah said, Elohim has presented me with a good present. Now my husband is going to dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. So she called his name Zebulun. And afterward she bore a daughter, and called her name Dinah. And Elohim remembered Rachel, and Elohim listened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bore a son, and said, Elohim has taken away my reproach. So she called his name Joseph, and said, Yahuah has added to me another son.
What did you see there, brother?
You know, I'll just leave it up to somebody else. I wasn't actually looking to elaborate, but thank you.
Yeah, no, we get it. You'll learn. We do that. That's what we do. We read and then kind of expound. So, welcome to the fellowship, and praise Yah for you, man. What do we see there? It's quite a bit there. So let's dig it up.
Okay. So in the case of Leah with the 5th son, Yissachar, just bringing it back to verse 16, where it says Yaakov came out of the field in the evening. So this whole event takes place because he comes home from work, right? So he's out in the field doing his work. When he comes in, he receives basically what Leah presents to him about the love apples and what she had to do to acquire him for that evening. After he understands this, when Issachar is born, that's why they name him my wages. Issachar means my wages or my hire. And so I just think it's all that whole section from 16 to 18. It gives us the whole context of why, like none of the other verse says that Jacob came home from the field or that he had came from doing something, but in this case it does. And I think there's a reason for Issachar, and it's just something that I noticed.
Go ahead, Mike. Good stuff, Tony.
Yeah. Anytime we talk about Joseph, you already know that can go on and on and on. So I'm just going to say it's crazy. Rachel had a son and named him Joseph, which means let Yahuah add, or let him add. I think all of us understand who Joseph is. The robe given to him of many colors. The name Israel was given to Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. So he inherited the name, the blessing went to him. But the idea of let Yah add, I think that can be a very good study on who Israel is. I'll stop there.
Yeah, we got quite a few chapters to let that be birthed. But that's good though, because we know that Joseph is a picture of Yahusha. You know what I mean? So without question, we're gonna dig that trench. But Joseph has definitely dedicated time. But it's great to pull that out because, even the way Yahuah writes and leaves record for us to understand, he always gives us a background, and he gives us a foreshadow just in the names themselves and the way that he tells us. And he'll even, give us a picture of what's to come and then go back to the story. It's almost like, let me tell you what's going to happen. His name's going to be Joseph, and it means we will add. You know what I mean? But all right, let's back to what we were talking about. Back to the regularly scheduled program, and it like Mike said, it gives us reason to go look. Okay, well, why did he say that? Why did he put that here? What does that mean here? So praise God for that, man. It's this is inexhaustible. His word is inexhaustible, and that's a great point. I think that whole culmination of her actually having Joseph too just shows how Yahuah has removed her shame. Everything, all of her actions, from the start of the chapter with her being, having a vilified attitude towards her sister, to the way she responds, to how she swindles, or is being deceptive in a way. All has to do with the shame that she has for not being able to bear children. And she prays to Yahuah, and he answers it through her son being born, Joseph. So great picture of, coming to fruition, how when we cry out to him, he will answer us. As Rick said this morning, he's begging for us to cry out to him. He's telling us if we cry out to him, what he's going to do. Who does that? You know what I mean? And so look, because we hold, in life, there are people that hold things hostage. Yeah, I've always had this for you, but you never asked for it. No, that's not love. Yahuah says, this is what I'm going to give you, but you have to come to me. Call to me, come to me, call to me, and I will answer and show thee great and mighty things you didn't even know existed. You knew not of. So praise Yah, he answers Rachel's prayer. Sister Robbie? Oh, I'm sorry. Mike wasn't finished. And then Sister Robbie?
Yeah, it's quick. Just one more thing. Reading this also really adds a little more context to as we move on and we see what Joseph's brothers do to him, because I always just look at it as they're always upset because he's the younger brother, but it started way back before he was even born. Like, it started back the fact that even the mothers, like, their mother was less appreciated, in their eyes. So they had this whole animosity towards the mother, and now this mother has a son, and now they're somebody said that.
No, I was going to say it goes even further back than I was pointing back. It goes all the way back to Cain and Abel. This whole idea, when we see it in Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael, Sarai and Hagar. So it's a running theme, it's a running theme.
But it just adds more context to why, not justifying them, but understanding why they would be so upset with this guy to be willing to sell him into slavery, or even the idea of killing him. It's not just the fact that when he was born, he got all the blessings. It was like even before his birth, his mother was even put before their mother. It's just like constantly they're being put under everything that this woman and now this woman's seed is. It's like, so this adds to that. That's all.
Absolutely, brother. That's a great point. It's repetitive. It goes back to this whole mindset of deception, this whole mindset of wrestling. Jacob gets his name from wrestling with Yah. The things that it produces. On the wrong side too. As we see, those that have ill will wrestle to their detriment. Sister Robbie.
Shading the point about how we want to have this intimacy with Yahuah and have this relationship based in his covenant, this love. I mean, Leah, she always gave the credit to Yahuah for each of her births. And then it says in chapter 30, verse 16, it says how God heard her. Let me see if I lost my place. Moreover, God. Oh, yeah, there it is. It says, and the last part of verse 16, it says, so he laid down with her at night. It says, moreover, God heard her, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a fifth son for Jacob. So really, this is talking about physical intimacy and spiritual intimacy, because the intimacy to conceive a child, I mean, that's very personal, very private. But Yahuah is a part of that, because he is the one that can open up a woman's womb or block it. So when she became pregnant, she knew that God heard her prayers and her desires in her heart to have this son. And then when she had her next son, her sixth son, where it talks about in verse 18, Leah said, God gave me my reward because I gave my female servant to my husband, and she has then another son, the sixth son. And then Leah says in verse 20, God has presented me a good gift. This time my husband will honor me, for I've borne 6 sons for him. So it just shows how Yahuah had so much compassion for Leah, and how he felt bad for her that her husband really didn't love and honor her, and that's all she ever wanted, was to have this close, loving relationship with her husband. But in the meantime, she knew that she had that close relationship with Yahuah. He sustained her and kept her going because she knew that he loved her, even if her husband didn't have that complete love and honor for her. But yet she still longed for her husband's honor and love. And that's why she expressed that God has presented me a good gift, hoping now that her husband will love and honor her. So that's just comforting to me, that we always have Yahuah, even if our marriages or we don't have a husband, we always have Yahuah who loves us, and we have an intimacy with him.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I kind of touched on, Leah's, devotion to Yah in the previous chapter when we were in 29. And Sister Linda brought out the fact that Judah comes through Leah. You know what I mean? So very important to point how he hears and has compassion for Leah as well.
Yeah, wonderful. Judah comes through Leah. Oh, that's good to know.
Verse 25 to 33. Who wants to take that? Anybody?
I'll take it.
Go ahead, Sister Robbie.
Okay. It says, now, it was after Rachel gave birth to Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, send me away so that I can go to my place and to my land. Give me my wives and my children for whom I've served you, and let me go. For you yourself know my labor, that I've served you. But Laban said to him, if I found favor in your eyes, I've looked for good omens, and Adonai has blessed me because of you. Moreover, he said, name your own price, and I'll pay it. Then he said to him, you yourself know how I've served you, and how your livestock fared with me. For you had very little before I came, and it has been busting at the seams in abundance. So Adonai blessed you with my every step. So now, when I myself going to make something for my household also? Then he said, what can I pay you? Jacob said, you don't need to pay me anything. If you will do this one thing for me, I will shepherd your flock again and watch it. Let me pass through your flock today, removing every colorfully spotted lamb from there, and every dark colored lamb among the sheep as well as the colorfully spotted among the goats. And do I continue to 33?
Through 33, yes.
Okay. And that will be my salary. So tomorrow, my honesty will testify on my behalf when you come to check on my salary you agreed to. Everyone that isn't colorfully spotted among the goats or dark colored among the sheep with me, it is stolen.
You want to pull out anything that stood out to you there?
Well, just the fact that Jacob had worked so hard, so many years for Laban, and that, Laban kind of tricked him at first, and how Jacob is gonna, came up with this plan about the sheep. It shows how smart Jacob is, that he's a businessman, and that he just wants to be fair, and he just wants to, have his family and get on with his own household from being under his father-in-law.
Yeah, I think Jacob too. I think part of that too is that Jacob always wanted to return back. You know what I mean? If you remember in chapter 27, he was only supposed to go be in Laban's for a short period of time while his brother cooled off his anger towards him.
Yeah.
And he ended up staying much longer than he initially anticipated. And then when Yah also promises him again in chapter 28 that you will go back to your land. So it was a desire of his. And after Joseph was born, I think he just wanted to get back and be done with being a servant for Laban. So yeah, good point. Brother Mike?
Okay, this is a different observation, and I'm not saying it's correct, so I guess maybe it's more of a, is it possible? Jacob's been watching this man's sheep for the last however many years. Clearly being a good shepherd, the fact that he's increased the amount of sheep that he hasn't lost them to being lost or, eaten by animals, he's increased the numbers. We know that according to scriptures, shepherd would even know the number of the sheep. Otherwise, you don't. That's how you keep track of them. You don't know how many you have. So my point is, he's the one watching these sheep, living amongst these sheep and goat, probably every day. Wouldn't he already know which ones and how many of them are already spotted and all these things? So could he not be picking that because he knows firsthand that the majority of the animals are spotted and blemished, being that he's living amongst them?
Absolutely.
So almost as if he's now getting back at Laban, picking him in a way.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree with that. I mean, just the whole idea of a shepherd and a sheep, and how Yahusha uses that very reference. I call my sheep, my sheep know my voice. They know my name. They hear me. You know, I call them and they come because they recognize me. In the same way, the shepherd knows his flocks. You know what I mean? He knows the ins and outs of this. He knew that the black ones were the preferred ones. He knew these things. He knew that they were the ones that brought the most money. So absolutely, I agree with you 100%. Praise God. Brother Mecca.
Yeah, we'll see, coming up to, what Mike is bringing out. But I think, there was a little bit of, I wouldn't necessarily say that he went after the ones that were most, but I definitely think through his working them, he knew, even though, let's just say he grabbed the ones that were least, he knew how to make them repopulate, and we'll kind of see that as we continue to read. But I wouldn't necessarily say like he was plotting and planning, just let me grab the most of your sheep, because, I'm not sure if Laban was paying attention at all, but I'm sure that instantly would have been an instant cause of a little bit of strife, but, like I said, through the next verses, we'll kind of see, his method, of helping the sheep reproduce and whatnot.
Mike, rebuttal.
Huh?
I said rebuttal. He challenged
you. No, because I didn't read ahead. I was only going off of what we read so far. So I could be wrong. That's what I said. It was only a question.
All right. But I think, Mecca, you raised an interesting point, because we know the outcome. But I think also there is a calling to understanding what a shepherd would be accustomed to knowing, and the fact that he used this as the severing point from serving Laban and moving on to his own land. So I think we have to pay attention to that as well. But great point as well, because we know what happens going forward. What else we see here?
A lot of left halves.
Go ahead, Brother Rick.
I want to go back to our prior verses, because there was a few things that I noticed that I didn't get a chance to bring out. And first of all, the first thing I notice here is that I never see this left tab with Leah. I see it with Rachel, but I do see it on the sons that she bore. So I find that interesting, for one. But then we see that Elohim remembered to left tab Rachel, so we see that he still is honoring his covenant with her, and he opened her womb so that she could have a son as well to give to him, which settled her reproach, basically. And then she called, of course, his name Aleftav Yosef, which we know he's one of those that are definitely mentioned prominently in Scripture, versus all of these other sons that were had. So I see there's a covenant that Yahuah has made even with these other sons, but it's still, I think this is the line of Rachel that was given to him that continued on that line, I believe. And then as we continue here, I see that, he's speaking about giving, or her giving this this root that looks like a man to be able to basically sleep with Jacob. And that kind of is interesting to me, that it's like she's paying Leah off by getting this root that has mystical powers. It basically is a hallucinogenic in a lot of ways. From what I was just looking at, has a lot of health benefits too. So, but I just found that interesting that she was using this as a way of, a bartering system almost, to be able to sleep with him again. And then she gives him 6 sons and a daughter. And had to really burn Leah to see that, to trouble her, I'm sure. And as we continue on and we look here and see that she bore a left of Joseph. So therefore she has been able to, I guess, do her duties as the wife and bring herself back to the right standing with, her husband. But then she goes on in 26, we say, give me a left of my women, because he's talking here, he has this covenant with his women and his children. And then it also says the left of my service. So all of these covenants, as you know, that I see here with these left ofs, brings this whole story to a whole nother level, because we see that Yahuah is involved in all of these things. And so he continues on, and I don't know, I guess we're going to find out about the cattle part of it, but he's bringing up here that a left of how I served you, and a left of how your cattle. So the baraka, or that covenant, increased the cattle while he was there, and all the provisions. So I think it's interesting that he's laying this out on the line. He's ready to leave, and the father's like, no, I don't want you to go yet. I haven't received everything that I was hoping to get, I guess. He's trying to convince him to stay longer and continue to take care of it, so he continue to be Baruch. But those are left ties. There's many of them I didn't even cover in here, but they're scattered all through this part of the scriptures, because there's a lot of, I think, covenant agreements that were made. So that's all I really wanted to bring out at that point. Mike's got his hand up. I guess he got something to say.
Nah, I just, wanted to, Rod, now I'll reply to Emeka. After reading ahead, I'm still going to stand by what I said.
Yeah, and for good reason. That's why I asked you, did you want to rebut? Because there is a purpose to what he's doing, because he knows.
Yeah.
And when I looked at it, what Jacob was doing, he was actually giving Laban the advantage. You know what I mean? He was giving Laban the upper hand for a purpose. So we'll continue to read and we'll go through it, but we definitely have to see the whole picture as we read through. But for these verses, anything else here? We stopped at verse 34. Mecca, you missed your chance to read earlier. You want to read the last verses, 34 to the end?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, brother.
All right, so it says, so shall my righteousness answer for me in the time to come, when it shall come for my hire before your face. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and brown among the sheep, that shall be counted stolen with me. And Laban said, behold, I would it might be according to your word. And he removed that day the he goats that were ring-streaked and spotted, and all the she-goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and gave them into the hand of his sons. And he set 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. And Jacob took him rods of green poplar and of the hazel and chestnut tree, and peeled white streaks in them, and made the white appear which was in the rods. And he set the rods which he had peeled before the flocks in the gutters, in the water troughs when the flocks came. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. And he set the rods which had peeled before the flocks in the gutters, in the water troughs when the flocks came to drink, and they should conceive when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth cattle, ring-streaked, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob did separate the lambs, and set the faces of the flocks towards the ring-streak, and all the brown in the flocks of Laban. And he put his own flocks by themselves, and put them not unto Laban's cattle. And it came to pass, whensoever the stronger cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. And the man increased exceedingly, and had much cattle, and maidservants, and menservants, and camels, and asses.
All right. What do you see?
It seems like, the tactics or the strategy that he used was to, increase, those that were stronger. It seems like he did use a little bit of wisdom doing this. But I also see that he put some distance between, Laban's flocks and his. So I don't think that was for no reason. I definitely think that he knew, kind of like towards what Mike was saying, he knew something ahead of time, and was definitely doing things a certain way because he knew what the outcome was going to be. So, I'm not sure if it's necessary that he grabbed the grabbed the majority, but he may have known that, there was something about the speckled flocks that, that was, there was something about the speckled flocks. Maybe they produced better or stronger or, whatever it was, but, there was something there. He did know, like Mike said, there was something that he knew, and which guided his actions.
Man, when you look at the full picture, it shows the beauty and illumination of the truth. I'm just kidding. But I think we, sometimes when we look at scripture and we take it out in pieces and don't see the whole understanding of what's happening, we lose sight. It's easy to go, and that's why there's so many different belief structures and systems and cults and all of that, because they're not seeing that it's one complete picture. It all ties together. So praise Yah, you saw that, brother. And Mike, you were going to say?
No, I have my hand up just in case he didn't see it, but he did. So, yeah, it was very clear that he, like I said, he knew which ones he was picking for a reason, and he wasn't even, according to those last few verses, he wasn't really even being fair, I would say, he was separating the strong ones to conceive amongst his, and putting the weak ones in Laban's pen. So specifically making sure that he had the advantage, which is why we're going to see again, people were hating him where he was. But this time, not necessarily because of something Yah did for him, but something that he was actually doing. So he kind of brought that upon himself, I would say. But yeah,
Absolutely, good stuff, man. Everything is not as it always appears to be. Jake, he saw something. He thought he had the advantage because of the size, because the spotted and speckled ones would have been the smaller ones. Didn't necessarily mean that they were the stronger ones. But that's all Laban saw, and then by the way he divided them, and then it says he put 3 days journey between them, he was able to feed them properly, so you got to look at all those things. So praise God. What else? Anything else we see there? Well, that pretty much sums up that portion. Or anybody want to pull anything else there?
Well, it shows that it was Laban that put the 3 days between them, though. Yeah, sorry. Laban put the 3 days between them.
Yeah.
But yeah. Verse,
what else?
Well, what he was doing with those rods, using the hazel and what was that green poplar, whatever. What is that? Some kind of, like another type of animal aphrodisiac or something that he was doing that was causing them to conceive or something? Or does anybody know what that is?
The green rods of poplar,
And hazel.
the various colors. It was just, I think it was more of a symbol. Verse 27 says, and Laban said unto him, please stay, if I have found favor in your eyes, for I have learned by experience that Elohim has blessed me for your sake, or that Yahuah has blessed me for your sake. So I think it's some type of symbol towards knowing where your blessing comes from, I guess.
What I see there is, it looks like this thing is this combination of these green poplars, hazel and chestnut, that he put in there to help them conceive. Evidently, there must be something in there that helps the animals as they drink this to be able to conceive as they drink.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So he knew this. This guy had some insight. He understood these animals, and what would probably help them to conceive. And he did it for himself, but you don't see that he did that for the other guy's stuff. But I see here also the Aleph Tavs in here that are interesting, because he says that he removed that day Aleph Tav, the goats that were ring-straighted and spotted, and Aleph Tav, all of the she goats that were specked. So these were, evidently, he had some kind of covenant agreement there that Yahuah must have gave him this insight about that he understood, and he basically, made this agreement with him, that he was knowing what was the stronger ones versus the, I guess, weaker ones. Then it says here, and then he set 3-day journey between himself and Jacob fed Aleph Tav the rest of Laban's flock. So he did look like he did do a little bit for Laban as far as fighting for them, but it looks like he knew what it was going to take, what was going to be the stronger animals maybe in the combination of these, whatever they are, these branches and such that have these type of effects on animals, evidently.
Okay, I'm seeing.
I think also it definitely has to do with the covenant and him and his belief that Yahweh bless him. Back to what Tony was saying earlier when he was saying how, we didn't hear a response from Jacob because he knew that Yahweh was going to bless him. And in chapter 28, he actually does that, says that, promises him these things. So these speckled and spotted lambs very quite possibly, along with the reeds or rods, could have been a symbol of him and his belief in Yahuah and what he was going to do. Spelled out, is this what was spelled out there? Is this what he knew to do to receive Yahuwah's blessing? But either way, this was a faith movement here. You understand what I'm saying? This was, go ahead, Mike. Mike.
Okay, so I'm looking at it again, and I'm looking at the words here. Again, I'm looking at it now, not sticking with the English, because so verse 41 says, "And it came to pass, whensoever the strong cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutter, that they might conceive among the rods." It says laid, right? That word H7760, seam or sum. It says to appoint, to bring, to call, to care, to cast in, to change, charge, commit. I don't even see the word laid down there. What I do see is all these words there can be summed up into direct. So with the rods, I can see him directing the cattle into going down to into the troughs that he's talking about. So reading it with the Hebrew here, taking off the word laid, as if he's like, because when I first read it, it sounded like he's like just peeling these rods and stacking them up somewhere. But if you read 41 or 40 to, I'll just read it. It says, and Jacob did separate the lambs. So the context here right now is separating. He separated the lambs and set faces of the flock toward the ring straight, and all the brown in the flock of Laban. And he put his own flock by themselves and put them not unto Laban's cattle. And it came to pass, whensoever the strong cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they may conceive among the rods. So there I see him directing the cattle using the rods into the gutters. And it says, but when the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feeble were Laban's and the strongest Jacob's, and the man increased exceedingly. So I kind of see him using these rods to direct them, the cattle, using them to separate them, right? So, which, I mean, they still do today. They don't necessarily use rods. They would, chase after them or use dogs sometimes. So to road animals, you'd set a path and then you'd separate them to go down whatever path you want them to go through. So I see him using the rods to separate them, and then so he's separating the weak and the strong, and then kind of using that method. Do you see that or not?
Yeah, I mean, I see that and more, because in chapter 31, we're going to see some of these things come out in the dream that he has later. That'll give us more understanding to what we're reading now. But we're gonna stop here for today. We're not gonna go on to 31. So, what do you guys think? We could read the next 15 verses just to see what happens. You guys want to do that?
I definitely want to see what happens.
All right, so
You mind if I add? You mind if I add what I just seen in the as far as like a foreshadow?
and what
Um,
you just saw, what do you mean?
and okay, so like looking at you know, we see Jacob, basically saying, "I'm going to take the spotted and speckled ones, right, and take those, under my charge." And so you look at Yahusha, it's kind of like the same thing Yahusha did. He took the spotted, he took those that were sinful and had, spots or blemishes, you would say, and he took them and he purified them, making us, you know, blemishless, being able to present us blemishless before Elohim. And, those that were already righteous or in their minds already righteous, you kind of see a drop off or a fall off of them because they didn't believe in Yahusha, and so I just thought it was kind of interesting, how Jacob, is bringing increase amongst these speckled and spotted lambs, and sheep, and um, amongst these lambs, and we see that Yahusha did the same thing as far as with sinners. He and the way he did it was, he was bringing them out the same way Jacob brought them out of Laban's flocks. Yahusha did the same thing with us. He brought us out of the flocks of the Pharisees and scribes, these people that were misleading us, and malnourishing us, and you kind of see, the representation of Yahusha here with Jacob. So, I just wanted to bring that out. Thought that was a little foreshadow.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm sorry, brothers. I was distracted by something else, but I think we should read more. Go ahead, Tony, and then Mike, you can read
Okay.
Genesis
Uh,
31.
in verse 43, it uses the word exceedingly twice, and I double checked it in the Septuagint, and it says the same thing, H3966. It uses it twice, exceedingly, exceedingly. When I saw that, it reminded me of what's written in Isaiah chapter 60, where it says, verse 5, "Then you shall see and be bright, and your heart shall throb and swell, for the wealth of the sea is turned to you, the riches of the nations come to you." And then verse 7, "All the flocks of Kedar are gathered to you, the rams of Nebaioth serve you, and they come up for acceptance on my slaughter place, and I embellish my esteemed house." And verse 11, "And your gates shall be opened continually. They are not shut day or night, to bring to you the wealth of the nations and their sovereigns in procession, so that the nation and the reign that does not serve you shall perish, and those nations shall be utterly laid waste." So it just, Yah is hallelujah. He's made these promises just like he made them to Yaakov, and he did his actions in faith. We know that he was a righteous man. He did everything in faith, and he was increased very, very much. So just for us, that promise that if we live our lives in faith, the promises that we're going to receive is basically an unending amount of wealth. And even though it's material stuff and we're already above the material things, we're still going to have that, as our gates will never be shut. And that's a promise from Yahuah. Hallelujah.
Praise Yah. I appreciate that. As we're looking at it, we can't forget that this is the Yahuah of Jacob, and that he's on display before. And Laban even says it: everything is blessed through you, because of your Elohim, because of your God. So it's very important. I think this is why we have to keep reading at least the next 20 verses, because we are going to see that it didn't matter what Jacob picked. It was going to happen because Yahuah was behind it. Yahuah was the one giving the blessing, was giving the increase. Because if he had to pick the bigger lambs, no matter what Laban did, Yahuah switches, as Laban switches and tries to swindle out of what was already seen when he starts watching it, Yahuah still gave the blessing to Jacob and his flock. So let's keep that in mind. Very good point, brother, because this is the Jacob. We worship the Jacob of Isaac, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know what I mean?
The God,
that is
yeah.
God. Huh?
You meant the God. You said we worship the Jacob of.
Right. No. You know what I mean.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying. I'm excited because it's coming out. As we read it, it's coming out, and we're seeing these things, and we're reminded Yah is doing this. This is not a scheme. This is a Ruach driven. He's doing this driven by the Ruach. So, go ahead, Mike. You can.
Before you do that, brother,
go ahead and read. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we only got 20 minutes left on this recording.
Oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, let's.
Well, I'll just comment on what you were just saying then.
Okay. Yeah.
Unless Ricky, did you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to bring that to extension so we don't go over the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, because if we go into it, we're gonna go over. So let's definitely we'll end it, and
okay.
we can
Part
talk
2.
about it. But go ahead, Mike.
Just to piggyback on what you were saying, like me and my sister were just talking before the study about very similar topic. People always saying they abuse the saying everything happens for a reason, but it's like, yeah, but it doesn't have to happen the reason that you're doing it. So for instance, like with Abraham and Sarah, them having Abraham going to Hagar to have a baby, and say, everything happens for a reason. Like, yeah, but that wasn't Yah's plan for you to take into your hands. Like, he was still going to have a baby. In fact, look, you went and had a baby, and now that baby, look what happens now. Look what happened to him and his line because you did something outside of Yah's way. So yeah, it happened for a reason, but not a good reason. Right. Same thing here. So like, if he's being dishonest with picking certain ones, yeah, it happened, but he didn't have to, because at the end of the day, Yah was going to make sure he was blessed because his word's not going to return to him void. So it's like when we try to step in and make sure Yah's word happens, like you're doing something that's unnecessary, and you're actually probably going to be making it worse and hurting the situation, not helping it. So,
absolutely. I mean, we saw that when we talked about
continually
when we talked about Rebecca, and Isaac. You know what I mean? And the things that she did. And yes, Yah did promise that Jacob would be the heir, but not like this. Like you didn't have to go through all this to get it. I was going to give it to him. But we see, some of those same things that Jacob did come back to him. Now, eventually he blesses Jacob, but there are consequences to us getting off the road, getting off the path. And just because something happens doesn't mean that it's the perfect will of Yah. It happens because we have choices. He always gives us choices. He wants us to pick the right one, and he's gonna bring us back around. We might have to be drugged through the thistles and the thorns, and we got scars when we turn up. But we get back on the right path if we are truly following him. But we do, and that's why it's so beautiful in the way that he allows us to read the lives of these people. He allows us to see every mistake that they make, so that when we either obey him, we get the blessing, and even when we disobey him, we see, okay, here's the way back because I disobeyed. So praise Yah, man. But
get drugged through the mandrakes.
Huh?
Get drugged through the mandrakes.
Get drugged through the mandrakes. But So praise Yah. This concludes our Genesis chapter 30 study. Yah willing, we'll dig into chapter 31 next week. Read ahead. It's a long chapter. There's a lot being told. We'll get the culmination of what's happening here next week. So, praise Yah, and Shabbat Shalom to everyone.